Welcome everyone. Welcome to our FabFems Friday. Today we are celebrating engineers in medicine, healthcare, and medical technology. So some different career paths that our engineers have headed into. And I'm excited about our panelists today. You're going to hear all about them and hear from them directly. I know it's easier for them to introduce themselves than to let me introduce themselves, because then I'd just be reading a bio. So we want to hear directly from them. So I'm going to start with Paula. If you can tell us, who are you? Who are you? Where'd you come from? Where's your hometown? What was your educational path? Where are you now? And maybe share with us something that you like to do outside of school, work, all that. What's your hobby?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Paula. I grew up in a lot of different places, but I say my hometown's Houston. That's where my family is right now. And actually I'm here in Houston right now too, just moved recently. And I did geosystems engineering and hydrogeology as my undergraduate degree. I graduated in 2016. And I had my work experience at Epic, an electronic medical records company, and moved away from Texas and lived in Wisconsin for a while. That was very cold, so it's been nice being back in Texas to the warmth. I came back to get my MBA degree last year back at UT, so being a double Longhorn, I love UT, place to be at. And outside of work, during coronavirus, I took on some artistic activities. I did a paint by the numbers. It was very relaxing and soothing. And I also really like being in the outdoors and visiting national parks. And it's one of the more safer places to be at right now. So that's a good hobby to have.
That is a good hobby to have. Being outdoors is definitely a good thing. And with the cooler weather right now, then it's a good time to be outside. Karina, let's hear about you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, my name is Karina Pratt. I'm from Llano, Texas, so bonus points if anybody knows where that is. It's a very small town, but yeah, and then I moved over started going to school at UT, and I graduated with mechanical engineering, graduated 2015. So I've done a lot of different internships and a lot of different, all sorts of different applications. So it's been really interesting getting back into the medical and pharmaceutical industry. But, and yeah, what I like doing, I like country dancing, but that's not allowed during coronavirus. So it's really been a lot of outdoor activities as well. So
no country dancing outside.
No, yeah, nope, none of that. Line dancing, I did do a line dancing class outside. Very interesting.
6 feet
That's
apart.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you. All right. Well, let's maybe hear a little bit more. So, our students always try to understand, what did your decision process look like? Why did you choose the major that you chose? And then, maybe talk a little bit about how you got to where you are. Paula, you talked about you went into geosystems. That's a very different space than going into the medical technology realm. Can you talk a little bit more about how you chose your major and then how you've navigated to where you are now and what you are doing?
Yeah, so I'm definitely very much an explorer, a career explorer, but I'll start at the beginning when I was in high school and thinking about which engineering degree or degree in general to go into. I chose geosystems engineering. It's a hybrid between petroleum engineering and geology. I have a dad who is a drilling engineer, so kind of saw with that and wanted to stay in Texas, and being outdoors, like understanding the geology of the land was exciting, and that's the path I chose to be in. And I went along with it, but I never actually had an internship or work experience in oil and gas, because around the time I was graduating in 2015, 2016, the oil prices were falling, and I guess it's doing that again right now. And the industry wasn't, it was a little turbulent, and I guess I didn't find my path into it as easily. And so I became a lot more open in exploring new opportunities and options. And that's like, you know, your degree doesn't have to define you. You can, and being an engineer, you learn to problem solve. And I did like the technical aspects, and I knew like I could do a lot of different things. I had a lot of student organization involvement, leadership and project management. And so I found an internship my junior year in construction as a project engineer. That was a little more related to my degree in ways because I took like some civil engineering, geotechnical engineering classes, but it was still just, you know, project management of moving a construction project along. And I got to experience some technology aspects of integrating like iPads and document review systems in the construction. So I like the software technical aspect of it more than like being in the construction side necessarily. So I didn't like want to go into a full-time career in construction, but did like the technology side. And I was full-time recruiting in like project management and consulting roles, looking at companies who hire more than like a specific degree, you know, who are open to a lot. So I got to recruit with Epic. They are like the leading electronic medical records vendor that works with all like large and small hospitals across US. And, you know, they have a really good training program and path. And it was, you know, something to move out of my comfort zone of moving away from Texas, going to Wisconsin. But I felt like there was a feel good aspect of it to this job because it was a product that was helping real people in their healthcare of, you know, like if I go to the hospital or healthcare that my data and my care is good. So I really like enjoyed working there. My 3 years that I was there, got a lot of responsibility early on in my career, worked with like directors and executives of the hospital, and you know, like how to implement a software, being technical of understanding the software, but also helping interface with people a lot. So I guess that's been my path, and now I'm doing an MBA to further explore and complement my engineering side with business.
Awesome. We'll come back to the business stuff and ask you some more questions there, I'm sure. Karina, what about you?
Yeah, so why I picked mechanical engineering was because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do engineering, and really it was because my parents were both engineering type, and my dad and I would always, you know, go fix things. So I really liked working with my hands and working with my dad and my mom and going to different camps. And I went to some UT camps when I was growing up too. So it really just made me love engineering and then love UT. So I picked mechanical because it's the most broad, and because I didn't know which industry I wanted to go into, I just figured it would be the easiest one. So my first internship was with Chevron, so oil and gas. So maybe we should have like switched. And I liked it, but I was never really interested in oil and gas. So after that internship, I did 2 internships with Boeing, which I really, really enjoyed. But I wasn't too sure that I wanted to live in Washington. So I didn't take that job out whenever I graduated college. I wanted to do a rotational program. With Boeing, I didn't get accepted into that rotational program, so I kept applying to other different places. So the one that I did get accepted to was at ICU Medical, which is in Austin. And I was like, well, that's great. I want to stay in Austin. I can go to all the football games. I can do all that. So I accepted that job, but I got this weird opportunity. So I went to work for Disney for 6 months right after I graduated, and I was doing quality engineering. So after that, I came back to Austin, started working at ICU Medical. What they do there is they make IV bags. So we start with plastic pellets. We extrude the plastic. We make the plastic bags, and we fill it with our solution, which is also made, sterilize it, package it, and ship it out to hospitals. So it was a very good opportunity for me to learn. After the rotational program, it actually canceled because they changed names. It was a long process. So they changed names. I was a maintenance supervisor for about 1.5 years, which was a long time, but I really liked that job. I learned so much more than I think I would have, because it was very hands-on. It was working with mechanics all day. It was figuring out what was wrong with the equipment and try to fix it or improve it. And then I changed over to being a process engineer. So very similar, just more engineering, which I liked. After that, the beginning of this year, I got an opportunity to go work for Universal Studios. So I started that job March 16th, which was right when the coronavirus happened. So I moved all the way to California. I was lucky enough to work there for a few months as a project engineer, but they started doing all these furloughs and I was one of them, which is fine. So I was really lucky in the people that I met at my old job in Austin. They had kind of moved around, and a lot of people came up to Cleveland, Ohio, to work for Exelia Pharmaceuticals. And so I reached out to my old boss, who's now my boss here, and I said, hey, listen, this is a situation. Do you have anything that I could, join your group? And he said, yep. So now I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. I started 4 weeks ago. It's really interesting because now I'm doing IV bags again. So I guess that's my specialty. But yeah, it's been a really good opportunity. I've been able to go travel a lot because I've been working on bringing in new pieces of equipment, and really working with the vendor, doing engineering work. So what I do now, I really, really enjoy. And also, we're making IV bags, so it's helping people every day. It's definitely a challenge and it's busy, but I really enjoy it.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to come back to you, Karina. We'll start with you and then we'll go over to Paula on this one. So you mentioned, engineers make our world a better place, and these products and solutions that we work on as engineers help with our health, help with our safety, help make things more fun, all of these things that make our lives better. Can you talk maybe a little bit more about maybe your work with the IV bags? What does that mean to say I'm working on the IV bags or I'm bringing in the equipment? Like, what does an engineer actually do with that technology? What does that mean to be an engineer working in this space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll revert back to my Austin work because that's, I was there for 3 years. But so when I was a process engineer, really what our original goal was to just make sure the equipment is up and running. And then because all of that equipment was from the 80s, there were a lot of issues with it. So a lot of reliability was also involved. So that's kind of what our original role as process engineers were at that location. But we were actually able to bring in a new line to make more IV bags. So with that project, it was, okay, well, so we want to make this line. So now we need to get the equipment and write all the specifications for what we want. So with that, I got to help write exactly what we wanted from each piece of equipment, and then work with the vendor. So traveling, doing design reviews, traveling to the site that the vendor was to do a factory acceptance test, make sure it was exactly what we wanted. With the pharmaceutical industry, it's a lot more regulated than most other industries. So some people call it red tape, but there's just a lot more documentation that you have to go through. So instead of just saying, that's a bad valve, I don't want it anymore, or I want to change it with this that I think will be better for the system, You have to go through a lot more documentation to prove what you're doing is going to work and why it's better and it won't affect your final product, especially because IV bags are going straight into someone. So you have to make sure everything you're doing is super safe. So yeah, a lot of documentation in all steps of the process, but would go to the factory acceptance test and then site acceptance testing, which is when we bring the equipment here and we work on it. And then after that is just qualification of the equipment, which is installation qualification, operational qualification. And then depending on what you're doing, you have to get it approved by the FDA. So that part I haven't been able to do yet. That is what I'm going to do here actually, because we're doing a new product that will have to qualify with the FDA. So that'll be a new experience, which is really exciting. So right now I'm working on site acceptance testing and operational qualification work here.
So I'm going to break that down just a little bit because I know we have some high school students that are on the call. So if we kind of think about the IV bag, so there's materials that I'm assuming that you're paying attention to, studying, researching, figuring out which are the best materials for all the parts of it. The bag, you mentioned the valves, making sure that it's the right materials, right sizes of everything, right thicknesses of everything. And then probably in the testing, it's also like the flow. How does the flow work through the valve? How does the flow work through the tubing? How does the flow work through the needle to get into the body? All of that material and flow and sizes and thicknesses is all part of that engineering. And when you're talking about the testing, it's testing that all those pieces are working together. It's testing and measuring that everything's the right thicknesses and the right sizes, verifying that the manufacturers are doing all of that you have specified to be part of the process, and documenting what all that is so everyone along the way knows what is intended, what is expected, what is coming out.
Yeah, it's funny.
Help summarize it?
Yes, it's really funny that you mention fill accuracy, because that's the issue that we're having right now. So this specific piece of equipment that I'm working on, what it does is we get the IV bags from a different manufacturer. So, and then the operators would place the bags on a conveyor system. And then a robot would pick up a bag, put it in a little kind of carrier is what we call it. And then it cuts the top off the bag, and then it goes to the next station. The next station fills the bags, and then the next station seals the bags. And then it comes around, discharges the bags, or it rejects any of the bad bags. So we are having fill accuracy problems. So right now, that's what I'm tasked with, figuring out why. So that's been a really cool opportunity, being able to go in and say, you know, here's the problem, but the solutions are endless. And so it's really kind of figuring out, drilling down into what actually is potentially causing this fill accuracy problems, which can be a lot of things, and then going through and actually writing test steps. So it's been pretty funny, because I remember in school, you know, writing all the test steps that you had to do for your labs and things like that. And I'm like, this seems kind of silly and, you know, a waste of time, but it's actually super important. So don't forget to write all that down, because what's happened is, you know, you're like, wait, what happened yesterday? What exactly did I test, and when did I make these changes? So it's really beneficial to keep all that information. So yeah, that's been specifically what I'm doing here now.
Awesome.
That answered that question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That hopefully gave our participants a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. Because you can apply that to any product, not just even in the medical spaces, right? This kind of process happens for every product that engineers produce and everything that you all deal with in your daily lives at home with your phones and your cars and everything. So I'm going to flip over to Palami. Let's hear about maybe a project that you've worked on, and you had mentioned in your, as you were talking about your career story, that making a difference and how you felt like you were impacting people's lives with the data and the processes that you were creating. Can you maybe talk a little bit more in detail on a project that you've done and what that means to be an engineer in that space?
Yeah, I'll talk about a project I did with a hospital in Maryland. It was on digitizing the MOLST form, Maryland Orders of Life-Sustaining Treatment. It's like advanced directives of if you're in the hospital and you're not, you're not breathing, and like, do you want to be resuscitated or do you want to be let go? So a lot of those life choices that you might want in your care. And legally, it's like required every time you're in the hospital that you're asked these things, and the form is filled and it's updated from any previous record. And it used to be done on paper, and that leaves a lot of room for required questions not being done or not being updated from the last time. It's like done on paper and then it has to get scanned in to the digital record. So there's lots of rooms for error or not ensuring the proper process happening there. So I worked on a process for having this be a digitized part of the workflow in the electronic medical records every time the patient's in the hospital. And so there was like a lot of coding involved in that of, creating the questions, the forms, and how it gets filled, what are the required fields, what are not, and how it gets like stored in the database for this particular patient, and also pull in like prior information for if it's already been filled once, like what was the answers the last time, so that you're not like necessarily having to enter everything again, but like you do need to verify it again. So this was an interesting project because it took a long time. We knew like another hospital in Maryland had done something like this, so it another like an Epic customer. So created that facilitation networking to understand how it happened, and then you coming from my engineering and like understanding software and coding, but I was explaining it to some analysts who are not, that aware of it. So kind of using my skills of explaining technical concepts to non-technical people in like a simplified manner of kind of drawing schematics and color coding things and trying to explain it. But so yeah, it was I like that facilitation between hospitals, and it was a really long project. It was first done in just like a build environment that's like not affecting the real of the patients that are already there. And once we kind of had it good in a proof of concept manner, it went to the testing environment, and then you like tested with the whole workflow as general, like admissions and discharge process, like how it interacts with other aspects of what the doctor does, if like it's throwing something else off or not, edge cases. So test like a lot of different options that could happen for doing that. And once, involve in like other groups, applications that interact with it. And then you have to train the users to actually follow this process and get them ready for it before it like goes live into the production environment. And patients are going through this process. So I help with the training of, physicians, nurses, anybody who might interact, and just like how to interact with the patient also, for it to have like that human touch in it. And then, yeah, I finally went into production. And during this entire process, like I was glad I documented everything in a very well manner, because some other hospitals in Maryland also then found out about it, and it was really easy for them to also implement it because my documentation of it was so good that like the other people in Epic could help their counterparts at the other hospitals with it. So I got like 4 hospitals in Maryland doing this after. So I really enjoyed that project of kind of helping that the patient's wishes being documented and being up to date, and removing those chances for errors or required documentations not being done.
That's awesome. You hit on a lot of things there. I had to write some stuff down because I wanted to pull it back up and kind of reiterate it for everyone. So I think you mentioned at the beginning, but then you came back kind of at it at the end about how you didn't necessarily start from scratch either. You knew something like this had been done somewhere else. So you, as an engineer, one of my good friends always says, engineers are lazy. We do not like to, if we can figure out a faster, easier way to do it, we are going to do it that way. And so why start from the very beginning? And if we can start and build off of something that's already out there and just work to make it better. And so I thought that was a great example of taking something that you knew was out there, using your relationship and networking and communication skills to figure out what's there. And then you came back to it at the end, how then others learned. And so you were able to then share that with others, and kind of even reiterating what Karina said, that documentation is so critical, because if we can help engineers and others after us do these things easier and better, that helps everybody, right? It helps make our world a better place in a faster way. It gets these things out there in a faster way. So I thought that was great. So, sometimes I think the computer science software coding things freak people out a little bit if that's not the space that they're going into. So if they are not, you didn't go into software engineering or computer science, you went in to geosystems engineering. So you went into a completely different space. Did you have to kind of gain some skills along the way? Did you know exactly how to do this software related project when it was given to you?
Not exactly. So I mean, like, I took AP computer science in high school, and then you do like math lab, and there's some different softwares incorporated during your engineering degree. So you kind of just basically understand the logic structures of things, right? Like if, then, else, and loops. But just, I mean, those are just codes of putting words into just normal processes of things that are happening in life, right? So you make a schematic of things. But yeah, when I went into EPIC, it was, again, a different language. It was not like MATLAB or some Java, whatever I had learned before, but like my workplace, they train everybody. They trained me in just understanding the basics of the software language. But like in my role, I wasn't like daily creating new software or things. I was being the liaison of helping get like customer wants into like QA notes, that like asking for enhancements that software developers would do. Like I was, being the person to help break down the details of what they wanted, and somebody else would code it. But still, like, I knew how to read and understand the code. So I just again, like, I wasn't like brand new coding. I was just recreating structures and changing variables. So, I mean, it was probably the most coding heavy project that I did during my time at EPIC, but that's why it was kind of my favorite too, because it allowed me to be challenged and use something a little more.
Yeah. So I think, for all you students that are listening in, you don't have to know all of it. The companies will train you when you come into college. If you're one of our high school students listening in, they don't expect you maybe to even have had AP computer science coming in. A lot of schools don't even offer that. So you have the opportunity to learn, and that's what college is all about. That's what entry programs into companies are all about. That's what those training programs are, to help teach you so that you can then use those problem-solving engineering skills. And that's the beauty of engineering, right? You somewhere along the way get some of this confidence built into you, and some of this persistence of, I'm going to figure it out. I can do it one way or another. I might have to ask a lot of questions. I might mess up along the way, but I'm going to get there. So those are both great examples of how that all pulls together. So we have one question that has come in. So students, please, and I see another question in the chat. Please add in some questions if you have them. I'm going to start with this one that came to Karina. How is it working with FDA guidelines? Does it slow things down, add more levels of difficulty? And kind of related to what we just talked about, did you know anything about the FDA guidelines before you started working on this?
That's a great question. And no, I honestly didn't really expect to ever be in the medical field, but now I really enjoy it. So I knew nothing about FDA, and I mean, some of my coworkers and friends that also went to UT that I worked with at ICU Medical in Austin, they were chemical, and so they kind of knew more about the FDA process than I did, and I had no idea. So it does throw, it's really just you never really have to work with the FDA one-on-one. It's just making sure you have all the documentation in place every time you do stuff, just to make sure that if you need to go back to reference something, let's say something goes wrong, either like a deviation within the company that doesn't leave, or if something unfortunately does happen out in the fields that either a nurse finds or a hospital finds, then it comes back to us, and then we have to say, you know, why that happened, what could have caused it. And so if you don't have all that documentation that leads up to that, you can't say anything about what it could have been. So that's really where all the documentation comes into play. And then for the FDA, they do come and inspect your plant. So I have only been involved in one FDA audit, but it was very intense because basically they come on site and everybody's just kind of high stress because, you know, we want to make sure we're presenting the who we are and that what we're doing is up to code and all of that. So it's a really intense 2 weeks, and they kind of go through all your documentation and your training and your products, and talk with the different engineers and operators, all of that. So I never actually had to talk with one of the FDA auditors, but again, speaking of training, work never told us to just, you know, go, good luck, go talk to an FDA auditor, which is good because that's very intimidating. So they would always do like a training before if they knew you're going to go talk to an FDA auditor, or if you're going to work with them on the tours or taking notes with them. So that's another point, that you're never going to be alone. And they're like, work definitely was assisting with any of and your boss and management was assisting with the FDA and working with them when they were on site. So
Awesome. So we have a question about getting a master's degree. So maybe we come over to you first, Paula. You're working on a master's right now in business. So you talked earlier about how you're an explorer. So maybe talk a little bit about how that came to be part of your plan.
Yeah, decided to get my MBA. Well, I liked all the things that I did at my work. I kind of knew maybe I would want to go for a grad school, like when I was graduating. But yeah, I did everything that I wanted to, and I felt like maybe I was stagnating. And you know, you can like recruit and find another job, or like go back to school. I didn't really want to do engineering master's degree. Like I didn't want to do research and thesis. I thought like complementing with the business understanding and the structured recruiting process and career switching opportunities that an MBA allows was a better fit for me. But basically, like I had a lot of responsibilities in my job, and I didn't want, like, I wanted more responsibilities, grow in a leadership path, and get paid more for what I was doing than what I was getting. So I think the MBA really allowed me that more exploring more industries again, understanding like all like business concepts of, you know, marketing, finance, leadership, management, strategy, and just meet a lot of different people from different backgrounds. So like I was exploring, still like want to have like the technology aspect to my job, work with tech companies, looking at tech product management and consulting for like tech industries more. And I did explore a lot through my interview process last fall, and I'll be going into Deloitte's technology strategy consulting post-graduation once I graduate this May. So looking forward to still being in tech by like working with people and helping companies incorporate tech in a efficient manner.
Oops. Awesome. Okay. Karina, has master's been on your radar at all?
Great question. It has, and it always has been, but I just never really had a specific interest. So I feel like everything that I've done has just been, I've gotten really fortunate and it's kind of worked out. And even when it didn't, so whenever I went to Universal, it didn't work out, coronavirus and, other things too, but, I got the job that I had now. So it really depends on what you want to do. So if you really know that you want to go into a leadership role, then definitely a master's would help. Or going more in depth into engineering, if you have a specific field, then yeah, that's perfect. But one, I don't think there's a master's degree in IV bags. I could look, maybe maybe I could start one. That would be fun. But I don't know if I really want to stay in the engineering role or go more in the leadership path. What I have noticed though is that some of the management in the pharmaceutical industry is kind of 50-50 with if they do have a master's degree. And I think you can move up either way. Just how hard you work is really, what'll get you there as well. So that's my point of view on the master's degree.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's hard to know, do we go on to the master's and PhD and what does that mean? And I think you both have shared that really well, is that if you have the interest and you're wanting to learn more in some particular area, you think it's going to help you get to your next step in a career path, then by all means do that. The beauty of engineering is that bachelor's degree is considered that terminal professional degree. So you can go out, just like both of our fabulous panelists did, and go out and do your engineering with that bachelor's alone. But if you want to do more or do something different, you have all those educational opportunities ahead of you. So we are almost at time, and I want to make sure that I let both of our fabulous panelists answer one more question for all of you who are watching. What tips or words of wisdom do you have for these future engineers, our current engineering students, as they are embarking on this fabulously fun engineering career? Either of you may start.
I can go first. So my advice is to be open to new opportunities and not, great if your degree and what you want to do, get a job, and that's a great path, but also, your degree doesn't have to define you, so you can explore a lot of different opportunities, and being resilient in times of adversity or economic situations around the world. Right now, like, I have experienced it both times I was at the university, but being able to show your grit and go through it and manage your stress level effectively is a great skill. I mean, I would say, like, I still probably stress a lot, but use it to drive and fuel you in the right balance and not be crippled by anxiety.
Awesome, thank you. Karina.
Well, I 10,000% agree with what you just said, because it's so true. And I think everybody's going through, a similar challenging situation with COVID. So, I lost my job because of COVID. And so my big point is, don't be afraid to take those chances and those opportunities, even if it's out of your comfort zone. I think you learn more about yourself and what you can do, and you just grow stronger from it. So really, if something scares you, that's a good thing, because I think it's really easy to stay in a role that you're good at, but if you're not learning, then you can get stagnant really quickly. So might as well take that leap. And then also a big one is networking. Because that's how I ended up getting a job in the middle of the coronavirus. So it's really, really beneficial, and keeping those networks open. So even if you don't work with them anymore, if you haven't reached out in a long time, it's not unusual to just reach out and say, hey, you know, it's been a while, but how are you? Like, do that and they will appreciate it. And especially during COVID times, everybody, you know, would like to be reached out to. So that's my advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you both. What great stories and experiences. And hopefully for all of you watching, you got inspired by some of these career pathways and the things that are ahead of you and the things that you can do as engineers. FabFems is a website that you can also find other STEM role models and read about them and learn about them. So you can type in the keyword medicine, medical, technology, healthcare, all those things, and find more fabulous FabFem role models to explore and read about and learn about. You will find all of these recordings on our YouTube channel. So we've got playlists of these types of career chats and our FabFem Fridays that we've been doing since summer. So take a look at those and explore more of our fabulous role models there as well.